Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm Jay minute to have Sergej. It's been a while. How you doing?
Hello. It has been a while. Yeah. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine myself, and I believe according to my notes, we're finding out today if you found the right kind of ketchup in Russia. Is that what we're talking about?
That does not match my notes, but close enough.
It just occurred to me
me
because when you moved to Sweden, like it seemed like the main thing we talked about was ketchup. So
yes. That is actually one of my points.
okay, so the ketchup selection in Russia better or worse than Sweden?
It has a wider range of ketchup there, but not the kind of ketchup I wanted. To recap, Sweden only has like 2 different kinds of ketchup, with and without sugar, and that's it.
I still wonder if that's like an actual fact about Sweden, or if that's just like specifically the store that's closest to where you live.
I have been to many stores in Sweden, and only one of those carries like other kinds of ketchup.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so I was in Russia for the past month and a half, I think, maybe. I originally planned to be there only like 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
It kind of happened that I stayed there longer.
I mean, fair enough.
Mainly because I wanted to meet like as much of my family as I could.
Yeah.
And like not everyone was able to make it during this 3-week window. They originally planned to be there.
Okay.
So I kind of kept extending it by like a week, then another week.
One more week. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So in the end I saw like most of them. Yeah. Traveled to a couple cities. Saw stuff. Was cool. Moving on to the facts of the week, right?
I was about to say, like, I felt like this was, like, your idea to make this topic. I feel like you had more to say, maybe?
Yeah, obviously. Okay, so, my observations. And let's start off with the weather, because that one was bothering me the most. So, I traveled to Russia, Siberia to be slightly more precise, not really more, but slightly. And when I arrived there, it was like I think roughly 3 or 4 a.m. Like the temperature was actually representative. It was 3 degrees Celsius. So yeah, nice. Pretty nice, coming from the 35-ish degree weather in Germany.
Yeah, it was that hot. I mean, I know it wasn't the 30s a little bit, but, like, okay.
Like I traveled to Russia like in exactly like the hottest days.
Okay, fair enough.
So, so it was like so refreshing. Then like the next day it was 13 degrees. The one after that it was closer to 20, almost 20. Then 25. Then 32. And it stayed that way for the entire duration of me being there. Yep. It was hot.
you could almost argue that Russia is going to be one of the countries that profits the most from climate change, right? Because they have a lot of territory in the Arctic Circle as well. So a lot of the northernmost bits of Russia that are basically uninhabitable at this point. I mean, Russia and Norway and Canada. Oh, Canada's probably has a higher percentage up there and is the second largest country in the world, rather after Russia's largest. So maybe they actually profit a little bit more technically, but not that climate change isn't a good thing for anyone, but obviously in that way, more usable territory for them. Of course, other countries basically the entire Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia, is Saudi Arabia was never sustainable, but climate change isn't helping. Also Mongolia for some reason. I'm digressing.
So yeah, that coupled with the fact that the buildings there weren't really built for good ventilation in summer.
Yeah, because
they weren't expecting the summers to be that hot.
You're supposed to keep the heat in when it's cold.
Yeah.
Because it's cold. Right? Normally.
Usually it is. I was there in the winter from, I think it was 2016 to 2017. The New Year's there. And it dropped briefly to minus 40 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's cold.
Which I believe is also close to minus 40 and
is this 41.9 or something like that, where it's oh yeah, this is the exact equalization point. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, it does get cold usually. Not that cold, minus 40. It was kind of small anomaly, but it does get pretty cold. And so, okay, so...
Oh, it's exactly minus 40?
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. Temperature, ventilation, and the third fact that completely made it almost unbearable. Bathrooms and restrooms, usually in these old buildings, have heating that you cannot turn off. And the heating goes all year round.
Okay, that seems honestly a little stupid, because I feel like it doesn't add that much complexity to have an off switch just in case, even if you don't expect to need it.
It does, because the heating is just the normal warm water pipes, or hot water pipes.
I see.
It does add a lot of complexity.
But normally warm water only comes on command. That's
Well, it still circulates a bit in these buildings, apparently. I don't know.
Okay, because I normally you have a boiler or something that has the warm water, and then if you turn up a radiator or you turn on the faucet, then it runs through the pipes. That's how I'm used to understanding warm water.
Yeah, usually in self-owned homes, that is the case. In Russia, in cities, usually there is a central place where they make hot water.
Okay, I can see why you would want to keep circulating it, because there's a thing in some places where in larger apartment buildings, the further you're up, the longer it'll take until you actually get hot water, because you'll turn on the tap and it'll be cold until the hot water actually makes its way up through the pipes, which can, in some cases in taller buildings, can literally take 20 minutes until you actually have hot water. So I can see why circulating it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also the option of inline heating, but that's very energy inefficient and also probably expensive to install on every couple floors.
So yeah, it was hot. Going to the bathroom, just 5 minutes there, if you have to take a dump, you will be sweating. You'll be completely drenched by the time you get out.
Well,
it wasn't fun. Yeah. and it didn't really get much colder during the night because there was barely any. It was dark for like, I don't know, an hour or two.
Right, I pointed out
maybe,
how
at most.
Russia is pretty northern, and so the further north you go, the longer your summer days are and the shorter your winter days are. Yeah, that's a thing.
The sun did technically set, but it was never really pure dark. Like, you, at any point in time, the sky was still somewhat illuminated.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because there's different ways of defining how the sun sets, and I think I had heard, like, at some point during summer, there was apparently a point where, as far south as Paris, technically never got, like, true darkness or, like, true night, because there was always, like, a little bit of, like, it, probably to the level where, like, if you go outside at night, you wouldn't necessarily notice that it's bright, but, like, still, I think they said as far south as Paris, which, I mean, obviously also means that the entirety of Germany is north of that, and also just going by, like, north-south, it would also be the entirety of Russia. I don't know exactly with, like, axial tilt and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't, like, a straight line, but, yeah.
Yeah, like, I must say like this, like, if you were outside a city, so no lights whatsoever, you would be able to navigate. You would be able to see the world around you with just from how bright the sky was.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I wouldn't say it was bright, but it was, like, not dark.
I definitely have experienced that myself in Germany, where it's also, once your eyes have adjusted to the darkness, you can see fairly well outside in summer. Yeah, I've noticed that before as well. Now, granted,
and
I'm
also assuming
almost never
there's no moon light.
I mean, that's the other thing, right?
To that.
Like, oftentimes there is, of course, moonlight, so I don't know if that's, like, what exactly would be the cause then. It might have just been that I was thinking about the moonlit nights, but I have definitely noticed differences in, like, that, like, it's actually, like, somewhat doable. Yeah. Anyways, go on.
Alright, so, second thing I kind of noticed there. The traffic is kinda, it's pretty aggressive there. Like, the driving style of most people.
Okay, you lived most of your life in Germany. We're, like, the single most civilized country when it comes to road traffic. Like, I'm pretty sure that's actually true.
Okay. That might be. So yeah, for context. But yeah, it was pretty rough. Like, you frequently cut other people off. You overtake them in places you really should not be able to, or shouldn't overtake. Like, in normal city traffic, where it's, like, sorta, kinda traffic jammy, where it kinda moves but kinda doesn't. And, like, in the middle of intersections everywhere. It is crazy.
And that just makes the traffic worse, of course. But
like,
yeah,
even in normal moving traffic, say you are behind a truck and you're at an intersection and you're turning, for example, left, and in front of that truck is, like, no one else. Like, some people do overtake that truck in the intersection on the turn.
yeah, that's definitely a little dubious, at least.
Yeah.
I've heard that being said about other countries. About other countries as well. When I think I've heard about Italy, where it's like, oh yeah, the right of way is basically goes to whomever drives more aggressively. Even if there are technically rules, it's like, yeah, just people will just try to go. But I feel like
it's certainly felt that way.
I've heard it said about other countries too. I think the ones that stand out that I think I've heard people say was, like, Italy and Turkey. But from what I hear, and of course, we all know that Americans drive like absolutely nuts. Well, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is also just that American highways don't have any rules on, like, which lane you're supposed to be in. So people will also like overtaking on the right and stuff like that. So like, it's always a bit more chaotic that way.
Yeah.
And also like some American cities are particularly notorious for bad traffic, but also just in general, right? Like I feel like everyone who compares any country to Germany almost always points out that like, German traffic's actually really orderly, because we also I feel like the most notable thing is on multi-lane roads. I mean, besides the fact that we generally obey traffic laws, but on multi-lane roads, it's that you always drive in the rightmost lane unless you're actively overtaking someone. Which obviously, if there's a lot of traffic, the lanes will still fill up. But it's like the right lane is the slow one, and the next lane over is a little bit faster. And then sometimes you'll have it where like the right lane is, it's like back to back basically, so that everyone else is basically driving on the middle lane. And then the people that are like really speeding, well, not necessarily speeding because there might not be speed limits, but they're like going really fast, are then in the left lane. And so you'll have like a 3-lane road with like one lane of traffic moving slowly but consistently like at 80 kilometers an hour or something like that. And then another lane which is moving at like 100, 110 sort of. And then, the third lane where like every now and again you'll see someone pass with like 200. Or anything between 120 and 200 really, but...
Yeah.
Not necessarily
it do be like that.
Between 120 and 200, I guess, but just between 120 and however fast you can go.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gone faster than 200, though. But besides.
So, on the terms of speed, while we're on that topic, the speed limit in city limits is 60 kilometers an hour, and out of city, 90 kilometers an hour. So a bit slower than Germany.
Well, inner city in Germany is 50, and outside is 100.
Yeah.
Although some larger cities, I believe, also have 60, and some have. I've also seen cities that have 40, but I believe there are like some of the really big cities, but also have like wide multi-lane roads and shit like that. They will also sometimes put 60 as their limit, and then like a smaller city. I'm almost tempted to call it a town, but technically it's a city. Does for at least part of its road, where there's like a school nearby and everything. They have, despite the fact there's literally the main road, they have a limit of 40.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. So yeah, and like I don't know how to call it, like the gray zone maybe, like where when in Germany you drive on the road, you pretty much always drive like 10 kilometers an hour faster than the speed limit. So
okay, so it's worth noting that it's 10k. That most people drive about 10 kilometers faster, according to what it says on like the what is it called in the car, which usually also over-reports by like 3 to 4 kilometers an hour, like 3 to 5, I guess, kilometers an hour. So I think we've even had a car where we checked with like some of those like side of the road things which tell you your speed, which are notoriously also not that accurate, but and like the car would like think over-report by like 8 to 10, and it's like, oh, so if you're going 10 faster, you're actually going the speed limit. But most of them, you end up realistically only going about 5 kilometers faster. But most people tend to drive about 10 kilometers faster, according to the speedometers.
Yes. So yeah, like I might just call it the gray zone, where you don't really get into trouble, whatever.
Well, most people tend to drive slower when there's cops around. Also, if there is speeding cams, they will snip you if you go, I think, 5 kilometers over or something. Actually, probably 3, I think is the... So the official tolerance, I think, is 3, because they're like, oh yeah, your speedometer might be inaccurate, and blah, blah, blah. And so there's a little bit of variance, and they automatically like deduct, I think, 3. And if you're at all above after that, it is technically a violation. And again, right, like, traffic cams do take photos if you're going any amount too fast, pretty much. So, yes, you're probably not going to get pulled over on a flow of traffic, but if there's a speeding cam there, you will get snipped. Then again, speeding tickets in Germany also just aren't that expensive, I think, compared to other countries, because I think Germany is one of the few countries where speeding tickets have a fixed price rather than 8% of a salary, which means that if you have money, speeding tickets in Germany are basically irrelevant. Which, sucks. But I think they are also still fairly affordable for normal people. I mean, the only speeding ticket I think I've had 2, cost like $20, right? So that's not nice, but it's also like not tragic.
Not really a lot. Yeah.
Also, one of those is fairly annoying because they have it like right when you get into town, downhill. So you already have to like actively slow down because you're coming into town, which they always like doing that. It's like, oh yeah, as soon as you pass a sign, you have to go 50, right? But also, you're actively slowing down, so maybe you're still a little too fast. Also, it's going downhill, so your car wants to speed up naturally. And it's like, basically run off the Autobahn as well. But, I mean, okay, that's a little bit further up, but like, still. And the other one was, I still don't see an objective reason for why they had to put a 30 there. But it's like a street where like, for maybe 10 kilometers, probably not even, there's like 30. The rest of the street is 50. And as best I can tell, there is no specific thing that would necessitate you going slower there. Except that apparently they like putting spinning cams up there. Like, it seems like a pure money-making machine. I don't know if there's like any like, oh, there's like, like some people come off their properties in like dangerous angles or something. I didn't see anything obvious. There's like no schools or like crossings or anything. No turns, right? I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, like, so instead of the gray zone, I'm gonna just call it like the normal, accepted speeding
just
limit.
Just get to your point.
It's like 20 kilometers an hour over there compared to the 10 kilometers in Germany.
I mean, it depends a little bit. I guess if you're somewhere the speed limit's like 80 or 100, I think you sometimes see people going 20 above as well. But in this, like if you're supposed to go 50, people usually go 60, not 70. That would be a bit much.
Yeah. So yeah, there do happen moments where people do go up to 80 kilometers an hour inside cities.
That's pretty fast.
Like if the road is particularly clear, they. Yeah, moving away from traffic, kinda, sorta, onto foot traffic, I guess. The cities are very walkable. Like, obviously, compared to Germany is kind of useless because Germany is not really walkable.
I find that funny because Americans, when they come to Germany, are like, "Oh my god, the cities are so walkable." It's like,
yeah.
Like, have you been to the Netherlands?
So, Russia, generally, the cities in Russia are generally organized in city blocks.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's the correct term for it, but there's like smaller sections in the city where pretty much everything you'll ever need is within. Like your stores, your pharmacies, your kindergarten, your school, your whatever, work, usually too, is contained within one such city block. And they don't really get that big. So everything is within like a 5-minute walk at most. Except the hospital. The hospital, at least in the city I was in, the city I was born in, is like in a central location, like pretty close to city center, and is in itself like as large as like one city block. It's like a pretty huge thing.
The thing that's standing out to me is it sounds like you're talking about pretty large cities. And I was always under the impression that, like, east of the Ural, there's basically... I mean, I was going to say no people. I mean, obviously, there are people there, but I kind of never imagined, like, large-scale cities there. I don't know, it sounds like it's a very rural thing and, like, not...
I don't know, let me see what... if I can find, like, the area of the city and maybe the population numbers...
The point being, I feel like always the impression is that, like, what is it, like half of the Russian population lives in just Moscow and St. Petersburg or something. I don't know exactly what the...
I would not be surprised by that.
I was gonna say, like, let's actually look up. Let's go to Wikipedia. Let's go to Russia. I didn't need that tab. Legislature, government area, population. A 2022 estimate. 145 million. Let's say it's a little rounded. I'm rounding up, but it should be 145, I say.
Yep.
And let's see, Moscow should be linked because it's the capital. Moscow, capital and largest city, obviously, yes, has a population of 13 million, which is a little under 10% of the Russian population. And St. Petersburg... Not... Okay, how is when I type in St. Peter's, the first suggestion, St. Petersburg, Florida? Oh, because... Okay, fair enough, because you have to spell out Saint. Okay, that's my bad.
Okay.
It's St. Petersburg, Florida, and it's Saint spelled out Petersburg for the one.
Yeah.
I'm so used to abbreviating. Whenever someone says Saint, my mind just goes to abbreviating it. Has a population of obviously less. It's about 5.5 million. So collectively, they make up about like less than 15% of the population. 15% of the population. So it's actually not that much. Although I don't know.
No.
Oh,
quite substantial.
It doesn't. Okay, that was the actual city itself. Though it's 6.2 for the metropolitan area for St. Petersburg. Did I do that for Moscow as well? Yeah, Moscow metropolitan area is actually 21 million, so that actually does become a little more substantial. What did I say? We up to then like 26, 27?
The thing is, though, that this now we're talking about like a huge area.
I mean, yes, but also that's my main point was about like the whole like European Russia versus Asian Russia, right? Where it's like west of the Ural is where the people are. Although apparently not quite as dramatic as I thought.
So yeah, anyway, the city I was in has a population of 125,000 and an area, yes, that's the word I was looking for, is of 154 square kilometers. I don't know if that tells you anything.
See,
because you obviously need other numbers to compare it to.
Yeah, I was going to say, once you have a comparison, it actually works. Let me see if I can think of something. Population. Okay, no, that. I was trying to think of like a small American city because, like, obviously, primarily American listenership. For like a comparison, but the problem is, even if you think of smaller American cities that I would know immediately, still too big.
For a comparison, the biggest city over from where I used to live in Germany, and you still live there,
has roughly the same population and has like a little bit less area, like roughly a third less. Well, not roughly.
It has an area of 114-ish,
150-ish, and the population is almost the same.
And
I checked.
And population of about 100,000.
Yeah, it's a little.
101,000. Yeah.
It's the same ballpark, so that's immediately that's the first thing I looked up. I was like, that is what I think of as like a city, like a proper city, but still fairly small in the grand scheme of cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the first one I thought of as like because it's also like you said it's like 1/8 of a million, right? So that's like, because if you look at like the big German cities, right? You look at your Colognes, your Frankfurts, your Hamburgs, your Berlins. They probably all have over 1 million people. I'm pretty sure. So some of them, I mean, Berlin probably has over 10 million. I don't know, but list of United States cities by population. That's the exact thing I was looking for. I would have thought. Actually, let me first look up what the columns are labeled as. Okay, 2020 census, sure. 125,000 would bring us turns out the lower you go, the more granular. Oh, because I don't sort it by that. Let me sort it by that first. Then it was sorting that by the estimates for 2022, which I guess would also be useful. But let's go. 125,000. It slows down. Okay, there it is. 125,000. The closest to 125,000 would be Abilene, Texas. Okay, we'll run into that problem. Concord, California. Arvada, Colorado. Berkeley, California. That's one that people have heard of. Ann Arbor, Michigan. Right, like those. But yeah, most of those I haven't heard of. That's kind of the...
Yeah.
What are the highlighting things? State largest city, state capital. Okay. That state capital and largest city, federal capital. Okay. Yeah, we know which one that is. So by that we also have Topeka, Kansas, which happens to be the capital city of Kansas, and Fargo, North Dakota, which is the largest city in North Dakota, have roughly the same ballpark size.
Okay.
Also, the Topekan population is shrinking, according to their 2022 estimates, compared to their 2020 census data. Not relevant to the Topeka, that is. Fargo is growing. But there's anyways, besides what?
Yep. So yeah, where were we? Yeah, city blocks. Right. Yeah, lots of stores, lots of pharmacies, has everything in there. And when I say lots of, I really do mean lots of. Like at any one point where I could be standing in one such city block, I would be seeing at least 2 pharmacies. I don't know why people need so many pharmacies there, but there are a lot of pharmacies there.
I was thinking that. Why is there such a high need for pharmacies?
Also similar thing with stores. Stores come there in like all sizes. From like your really small stores that are basically the size of a pharmacy. Like pharmacies are usually pretty tiny. So yeah, like stores exist there in these sizes. Those are pretty common. Then there's like the normal size-ish stores that we are used to in Germany, like Lidl, Aldi, whatever. There's like
which also come in various
stores.
sizes, but
but yeah, they still like they're still bigger, but like not too big as like
like smaller example, supermarkets basically. Yeah,
a Walmart would be.
Yeah, and I guess the first one a good comparison would probably be like a gas station store, right? Those are usually also fairly small, maybe.
Oh yeah, like yeah.
I was trying to think
that is a good comparison.
I was trying to like come up with something that's maybe a little more international than. Pharmacies exist all over the world, but I'm not sure. Knowing Americans, their pharmacies are probably bigger.
I guess. That would not surprise me, yeah.
Not only because they're one of the most drug-dependent countries in the world, but also because just generally everything is bigger there.
Maybe they're... God, I forgot the name for it again.
CVS, what are you talking
about? The store you mentioned, the size you compared it to. Other than pharmacy.
Oh, is it gas station? Yeah, gas station.
Gas stations. Yeah.
It sounds like you were thinking of something specific, but you're just thinking of the type of stuff.
Yeah.
Also, is it just me or is it weird that most gas stations don't seem to have electric charging, but like random stores do?
Is that a thing?
I don't think I've ever seen an electric charger at a gas station, but like sometimes you see it like parking lots. Not that often. And for like German supermarkets, that usually you'll have like 1 or 2 stations. Not like in America where they have like an entire row of them.
I have never noticed. So yeah, also gas stations are not as universal as you might think. Like here in Sweden, for example, gas stations don't always even have like a store
I mean, right?
on them, or like without people there at all. Like you just pay by card.
Yeah, I mean, my nearest gas station doesn't have one either. But like, I feel like if your gas station has a store, it has a rough size estimate that seems fairly universal.
Also, not always true. Like I've seen relatively big gas station stores.
You also have like highway gas stations, which also usually tend to be bigger in all sorts of ways. But yeah.
So yeah, we gave multiple points of reference that all might fail. This is as good as we can get it without giving like out exact numbers.
I was gonna say the best you would be able to do is square footage, but like or square meterage.
Yeah.
But the yardage. The point is, yeah, obviously with like comparison, it's the whole thing where like a small boulder the size of a large boulder, that whole type of thing.
Yeah.
It's still my favorite thing where it's like, yes, as journalists we're told to always use comparisons that people can understand, and so we just kind of compulsively do those. And apparently someone, it's like, yeah. I think the guy who wrote the article was like, oh yeah, we were always told to like do like a comparison, like, oh, the size of a fridge so that people have like a frame of reference, which also very large size, but that's the point. And so he wrote the whole like large boulder the size of a small boulder line without even too much, without thinking about it too much. And it's just really funny.
Yeah, I love that line so much. But yeah, like you can also get to big stores like Walmart. Not in the city I was in, but like in the next biggest city over, they had like multiple such stores. So yeah. Yeah, let's close that topic and move on to generally like how cheap food is there.
Well, I mean, I feel like there's two ways you can evaluate that, right? I mean, I'm sure for you a lot of stuff was cheap, but I'm assuming if you were working there, your wages would also be a lot lower.
Maybe, yeah.
Also, I think the ruble has fallen a lot, so that probably also helps.
Quite a bit, yeah. While I was there, the ruble was basically 100 rubles for €1. Not quite exact, but close enough. It's like hovering above 95 rubles for €1 most of the time I was there. So, I don't know how to...
Like, just totally randomly, first thing that came up on Google, well, DuckDuckGo, but the ruble to euro, so lower means ruble is weaker, and like over the last year, it's kind of fallen from a peak of... This should really be that way around. 0.0178 to as low as, 0.009. So, yeah. It's half, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you can probably pull up the reverse chart. This will be so much easier.
Oh, there it is. I love how the entire chart just tilts. So yeah, from like the best point being about 56 rubles per euro to being around 107 almost. Actually, probably 108.893. That's probably why that's the top line there. And then so from 56 to... The point is the value of the ruble relative to the euro has roughly halved. I could look up USD, but it's probably pretty much the same. Yeah, USD is pretty much the same. The exact numbers are different, but USD to euro, fairly stable. It always looks fairly unstable. Like, this graph makes it look very unstable because it always has the bottom being the lowest point and the top being the highest point. But the difference is from 1.04 to 0.888, or 0.89 rather. So it's fairly equal. Oh yeah, so the euro has been recovering basically relative to the dollar. That's good.
Yeah, so I could get a wrap, like I don't know, like a lamachun. You'll probably know better how to describe that.
I wish I said a kebab, but yeah, like a kebab wrap kind of thing, or like a like a burger wrap type. Yeah, it's a wrap. that sounds about right.
Yep, for like 100 rubles, and that's like not like the cheapest price I could find, but like just the average price.
Which 100 rubles at this point, as we said, is like €1 or $1. Actually, it's closer to $1 than €1, but that's the point. Which, that's not bad. But also, I wonder how much your prices have risen, because like the value of the ruble tanking, and then like have the prices also doubled, or have they stayed more consistent? And so, for you as someone who primarily operates in euros, have actually gone even cheaper.
They have risen, but I don't think they have doubled.
That's what I was thinking, right? So it's also the other thing.
Yeah.
So you're really profiting from the tanking of the ruble, my man.
I really was, yeah. Yeah, and generally, like, most things were pretty cheap, but then you'd have like really random things that were like priced pretty much the same as here in Europe. I sadly did not keep track of what these items were, but I did notice that.
So I would have to guess how it's
sometimes. Electronics for sure, yes. But also not all electronics. Some was actually cheaper. Probably the stuff that comes like directly from China.
Yeah, and also there's the whole thing about like
over there.
The things that are embargoed and like import and like export restrictions and stuff like that do vary a little bit. There's like a thing about like nothing with particularly powerful chips, because those could be used for weapon systems and stuff like that. So, I think the more sophisticated something is, less likely it is to be cheap. I mean, generally, but also more so in that context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's about it for price, and only one smallish point I still have on my list is that fireworks there are like an all year round thing. Not like in Germany where it's only used for like New Year's.
Yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't really surprise me. I mean, Germany obviously loves regulation, but also other countries do have regulation of fireworks. Russia strikes me as the kind of place that wouldn't have strict fireworks regulations. That checks out.
Yeah, I've seen dedicated stores for fireworks while I was there. Multiple ones.
I mean, yeah, that
not as common, but
makes sense in Germany because
you do see them.
Because you can only, I think you're technically only allowed to fire them like once a year at New Year's. I think it's the only time that. I mean, you could get special permits if you have like an event or something, but it's like the one time a year that like anyone can. I'm sure there are some restrictions of like places where you can't technically, but it's more broadly like just allowed. And the sale of fireworks also in regular stores at the very time, I'm sure again there are especially shops for like people that do pyrotechnics and whatnot. Although they probably make so anyways, but what was going right? So they are only allowed to sell them, I think, like the week leading up to New Year's or something like that. It's only like a couple days in the year that you're even allowed to sell them.
Yeah.
Which also brings up questions about like how do you stock for something that you can't sell for most of the year, but honestly that's not my problem. So, anyone ask you if you wanted to take a little vacation in Ukraine? Did someone try to recruit you?
Luckily, no. Luckily not. It was kind of hinted at that like they don't really recruit anymore. They just hope for volunteers. Right now, I'm not really sure how true that is.
I think there was talks about
if at all
being paused. Also, I think it has been said for a while that people with like a permanent residence outside of Russia were not supposed to be recruited anyways. How strictly those rules are applied, obviously.
Yeah.
Always is the question.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't have anything to add to this because this is literally just asking what you've been up to, basically.
Yeah, like overall, it's been quite enjoyable. Like while I was not be inside being cooked alive by the temperature, it was pretty enjoyable.
There's one thing that I thought about. I'm assuming you flew there.
Yeah.
What was the availability of
We
flights?
flew. You couldn't obviously get direct flights, but like
I mean,
going over Turkey is like not that big a problem.
also you
It just costs
you
more.
couldn't get any direct flights to Russia.
No.
Okay. Because I knew there was something about
So
like
you have to fly over Turkey and
about
then from
restricted
Turkey to
airspace
Russia.
between like Western countries and Russia. I had heard about that being put up like over a year ago. I wasn't sure if that was still A, ongoing, and B, I wasn't 100% sure if that also might have depended on under which flag the plane flies. So I was like, for all I know, there was like some Chinese airline that actually is allowed to fly in those airspaces and just like corners the market on those flights.
There might be, but we didn't find one.
I mean, again, this might not be based on the flag or the plane. It might be based on the start and stop locations, in which case it's obviously impossible.
Could also be true. Not sure. Anyway, we flew there through Turkey. And on my way back, I flew to St. Petersburg. From St. Petersburg, I took a bus to Helsinki. And from Helsinki, I flew then over to Göteborg. And from Göteborg to the place I live now. Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to think for a second there if at that point you're already close enough that it doesn't really make sense to fly, but I think that's actually a lot further than intuitively I would think. In my mind, right, like Norway, Sweden, Finland, they're all like right next to each other, but if you think about it, like there's like a little bit of like ocean, I think, in between like Finland and Sweden as well. That like goes a bit up there, so they're actually not as close as you would intuitively think. Also, countries are always bigger than they appear on the map.
Also, just the distance still. Yeah, the distance still is quite a bit. I think the flight was 2 hours.
I mean, it's very possible. I was just thinking if you...
Yeah. Funny thing was, because like I'm traveling in the opposite direction of like the time zones.
Oh.
I only really wasted an hour. So I flew out at 18:55 and arrived at 19:55, even though I spent 2 hours in the air.
Yeah, so here's the thing where it's like, Helsinki, I mean, first of all, Göteborg is like all the way on the western side, and also, again, there's like the freaking Baltic Sea is like goes all the way up there. So when it's like, Oslo to Stockholm is like not that far, but like Helsinki to Göteborg is like quite a bit longer. So that's what I was talking about with like how in my mind those are like right next to each other in like a row basically, but in actuality there's like a bit of water right there.
Yeah, that is my trip.
Yeah. I asked one question that I thought about asking, which I thought about before we started talking, and then I completely forgot as you were talking, and then I remembered again. So, yay!
Nice.
Yeah, we talked about ketchup. That was actually the other question I came up with. Mostly as a joking thing, but also I had to ask.
Right.
Facts of the week.
Okay, so a bit of detail on the ketchup.
Sorry, the ketchup.
So they obviously have more variety, like a lot of variety of ketchup. I don't know how different they really are, but they have different flavors listed on them. And finding curry ketchup was even harder than in Sweden. And the only one kind of curry ketchup I found there really is not comparable to the curry ketchup I expected, like you would get in Germany. It was leaning more towards like being spicy and like not really. I don't know. It's just not the same. It's not the thing.
I'm just waiting for you to like order an entire pallet of curry ketchup to be imported from Germany to Sweden.
Like I found curry ketchup in Sweden. I don't know if I mentioned that last time. It might have
You
happened
did mention a
after
little
that.
offhanded this time, definitely, but yeah.
So
It's also just curry and ketchup.
I did find it. It's in a it's in a different bottle. Like no, the bottle is actually the same. The labeling is different on the bottle, but it's the same ketchup, same company, same everything, except the label. I did find that in Sweden. Took me a while, but I did find it. Yeah.
Well, I know you've been talking a lot, but the way the show goes, it's your turn with the facts of the week.
That is true. So, you know how in... Okay, no. Okay, let's start over. So, in World War II, there was a project on, like, making bombs, guided missiles, hit more targets, or be more accurate.
Okay.
And one of the ways they tried to do that in America was to put a couple trained pigeons inside the bomb to guide it.
Of course.
That was named Project Pigeon. Very creative, I know. It's the kind of name I would have come up with as a software developer. So credit where credit is due. And to do that, they put 3 pigeons inside the bomb, the missile, whatever, with screens in front of them that just show the live feed of what the bomb saw in front of it. And the pigeons were trained to pick on the target on the screen. The screen wasn't touchscreen. It was just on a swivel in the center. And depending on like in which direction the screen swiveled from the picking, it would correct in the opposite direction.
It's actually a fairly smart mechanical solution, yeah?
Yeah. And you had 3 pigeons, I assume, to like make it like average out the the pigeons picking to make it less error prone.
I assume the error correction as well, yeah, majority vote. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It never really like went into production. Kinda abandoned it.
Yeah, no
after
shit.
a while.
This is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
It's also a lot of pigeons.
It is a stupid idea. It is a lot of pigeons. And you need to train them all.
Yeah, you're complicating the technology and you need a shit ton of pigeons. Like, this is never gonna work. Like, even if even if it functionally ends up being more accurate, it's probably not worth it.
Probably not, yeah.
It reminds me of the time when they tried to use, I think, a cat as a microphone, but just putting a microphone in the cat.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what is the Americans' obsession with trying to use animals for their... I mean, yes...
I mean, it's not really just Americans. Like, I think Germans and Russians also did a lot of cruel things with animals in war.
Yeah, and to be fair, there are things. I think it was something about using mice against landmines or something. There were like, it's not entirely always been without any sort of success, but also most of these are just ridiculous ideas that why? Also, obviously, depending on whether you actually care about accuracy or just about hitting the target, which is a difference, there obviously is a solution that they found, which, I mean, a lot of countries have banned since, but cluster munitions. Where you throw basically like a rocket or something and then it splits up into multiple smaller rockets that spread over an area. And so one of them is going to hit.
Hopefully.
I mean, obviously, you can't really use that when collateral damage matters. Also, the reason why they're banned is because they have a bit of a failure rate, as a lot of explosive things do. And so if you send out like 100 little cluster munitions, chances are 1 or 2 of them are not going to explode. And the next time that like a child is playing outside and is like digging in the ground, this is going to explode. It's a big problem. I would say, what is it, Laos? Somewhere around there. Like it's like a big issue where they do use them in war, and like it's like one of the most heavily mined places in the world or something. I think at the moment the most heavily mined place in the world is probably Ukraine, but also both sides there are using cluster munitions, so that's gonna be fun as well.
Yeah.
But on a more lighthearted note,
Yeah, that was my fact.
My fact of the week is also about animals. More specifically, about killer whales. It doesn't sound more lighthearted. They have complex social behavior, as a lot of, I forget what the group is called, whales or dolphins, tend to have. There's a cephalids, I would think. Anyways, I want to sound smart.
Definitely.
The point being, they have complex social behaviors, and sometimes trends develop, or fads you might call them, because a lot of them don't stick, where like a behavior is started by one of them and then taken up by others. The funniest example of which is probably when in 1987 a female killer whale was observed wearing a dead salmon draped over her nose, and then spread through that whale's pod and 3 other pods in the area that are collectively known as island residents, who are all, or a lot of the younger ones I think specifically, were seen sporting veils of decaying salmon. And then, like a while later, they just stopped doing it.
Okay.
No one knows why they started. I mean, obviously, one started it, but like, no one knows why that specifically wasn't the spread, nor when they stopped doing it. I mean, presumably because there's no purpose to doing it. But so especially among the younger animals, like these kind of social behaviors very easily spread. The article that I got this from actually specifically was initially talking about how apparently they were attacking boats, which was the another trend that I think subsided since, but the salmon one I thought was more fun. The trends for whales, like fashion trends, like dead salmon over your face. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah. Before we move on to the halftime show, I just remembered, or saw a small little tidbit of information about the pigeon thing. One of the lead people in that project was the full name. Burhus Frederick Skinner. Hope I pronounced that first name correctly. The same guy that, like, the Skinner box is, that developed, popularized, whatever, the Skinner box, which is commonly referred to in, like, game development and, like, the game circle thing.
The whole point of the Skinner box is you...
asshole developers.
Yeah, the point is, if you press a button and you get food, you get tired of it eventually, you eat as much as you need.
Yeah.
But if there might be food, the animals kept pressing it over and over again, and that's basically the underlying philosophy about a lot of just gambling at the devil's chance, most notably, of course, commonly used to describe loot boxes. Because you never know what you're gonna get. It's like a box of chocolates in that way. Life is like a box of chocolates. It's been a while. We started by saying laser. Light amplification stimulated by emission of radiation. And
something like that.
Tonic, or was it tunic? I think it was tonic, right?
I'm pretty sure it's tonic, yeah.
The question was just, is O or U more common? We found an I. We know there are no L's or C's. We also found some hints for A, S, E, R, N, and only negative information for T, O, N.
So, surprisingly,
T-O,
which probably should not be surprising, we don't have enough information to basically deduce the first word.
Well, we have an S and an A. Or an A and an E if you feel more like it, depending on what for the first row and column. We don't have much information for anything, really. I mean, we have at most 2 letters of positive information for any piece, and that's really just the first row and column. And for some of them, we have a bit of negative information. Well, actually, for all of them, we have at least some negative information, I think. Except for the last row and column. I mean, this is the kind of thing where if we felt like it, we could try to put an A here and an R there, but it's far from guaranteed.
Uh,
Well, I mean, I was gonna say we know that we need an N in the current column, and it can't go there, but like there's still 3 spots that it can't go, which is not that helpful.
I would like to try this. Actually, I don't know. Probably the last spot for the N, or the first one. Or how do you feel about the 4th spot for the N?
I was thinking about it. I think it's less likely than the other 2, but I'm pretty sure we could make it work.
I mean, the thing right now is we don't really want to make it work. We just want information.
Well, yeah. We could also try a word that ends in ER if we want to try for the row. Has ER pointing down there. Obviously, those could be anywhere. In which case, the N, I guess, would go into first because it can't go in the row. It could only go in the column. And if we want to... I mean, we obviously can't put it here anyways. So then the only spot left if we put ER there is putting an N there. And I guess we conveniently have some... we have an A pointing here from one side, maybe, and then... Well, actually, I just suggested 4 letters that I don't know if they can actually fit into a word together. N-A something E-R. Nay... Per? We should maybe also try some new letters. That would also be good.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe we start...
Newer would work, but W is not exactly common.
What would work?
Newer. Something more new.
Yes, I mean, I initially said putting an A there, but yes. Newer would generally work.
Yeah.
The problem is, it has 2 E's, and as you said, W is not that useful. So, we're not actually getting that much information. What others are we still missing? What did I feel good about? G, B, U, P, M. I was gonna say number, but that's too long. It just occurred to me. If you're num, someone else might be number, and that should be spelled the same way than number. That's a completely useless observation. It's just num is N-U-M-B, and then if you add ER for the... It's a single syllable adjective, so it shouldn't be more num, it should be number.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Yep. It's what do they call it? Homograph? If it's written the same, spelled the same. Well, no S's. Is entirely stupid question. Is Naper a word?
I don't know, just try it. I'm not against it.
The first stop is we could try napes. But the problem is obviously that, there is no S. I mean, it's not really that great of a word anyways, but it would test for the N in the first position, it would test for the A in the second position for both the row and the column, and it would test for the E in the second to last position for the row. But I guess the R is probably better than the E anyways, because it tests for both the row and the column. And the A is also pretty good in theory. And we did try to narrow down the N. Huh. And R wouldn't happen, so it's N, A. Huh. Oh god. No, that's bad anyways.
Alien would test a couple letters. I don't know how useful that is.
I mean, it does test E and N in spots where they could reasonably be at least in one of those two orientations. So the E for the row, the N for the column, so it's definitely not the right word. But obviously the information is more useful, as you said, than actually getting it right. Anyways, tests the A for both the row and the column, actually, just as it would if it was in second position. L is obviously
but wait,
not
no else. Yeah.
Otherwise, the I could actually technically be there, although we already have one, so the question is how many we need. I had another stupid idea that actually technically works, but doesn't really help us all that much, actually. Which is exude.
Which is?
The problem is, right, like, the first E could technically work right there, but then we test for X. I mean, U I would not necessarily mind testing for, but then it's like D, which is also actually somewhat useful, and then the E in the last spot, which, like, there's something pointing to it at the very least.
Honestly, is also kind of useful.
I mean, yes, but also again, double E, right? Like, that's already a little redundant, and then the X.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you say about fudge?
I mean, it tests a lot of the letters that I was asking for. The E is not in the perfect spot, but I'll take it.
Okay.
Well, no use, no D's. I mean, it would have obviously been more useful if they pointed somewhere, but I guess at least we know that. Also, we now know that the central column is G.
We do have...
And an N.
Yeah.
Which you already knew.
And we do have an F somewhere. Oh, in the central row. Great.
But not in the central column. So we know that the central column has an N, a G, and no E, which seems like it tells us a lot. But also probably not enough to actually piece it together. It's also interesting that neither the G nor the N can go in the center. And obviously we have one other spot that they can't go, but I guess that doesn't limit it too much. Or do we have anything on T except negative? No, we don't. It occurred to me that we could have tried... Well, I guess it wouldn't have made that much sense then, but for the central column, if I didn't miss anything, grunt for like G for the column, R just for fun, U actually no use. Forget about that. And then N for the
we only found it out through the central scope.
Yeah, so I was thinking grunt would have worked if it wasn't for the U, which I realize now.
It would have probably been better.
Grant actually would be better anyways because a grant, if you will.
I mean, with the information we have now, it would be better.
Yeah.
We didn't know that U wasn't in the grid back then.
Yeah, it just it occurred to me because of the G, so it's not like I would have necessarily come up with that before. So that's the, but whoops, GRANT would work, and again we do still have to place the T somewhere in this 3x3. Well, okay, so for what we're actually supposed to be at right now, we have only maybe an E, which is not that useful. What do we know about N? Not that much. No, D's. Hmm.
Also not ideal, but brace would test a couple more letters. Test the E in the last spot.
Well, brave, not brace. Because no C's.
Oh, I didn't even. Oh, right, we did test these. Yeah, brave would work.
I
didn't even realize that we that we have already tested C's.
I mean, I also have to double check the keyboard occasionally, but it's technically still better than trying to look at all the black hints in the grid, so that's why we black them out by default.
Yeah.
But yeah, I make the mistake all the time. Brave would work, yes. I mean, it's better than I think the idea that I had just like a second before, which was Arbor, but it has double R's, which is annoying.
Ideally, I would completely get rid of the R.
I mean, we could go to Nave. Oh no, wait, the N doesn't work there at all. That was a stupid idea. I mean, it can't be an N here, obviously, because we know what the letter is. And it can't be an N here, so... Because if we have AVE, it does test for the E here, which is... I mean, we have two N's pointing at it, that's actually not that unlikely of a spot. The A, obviously, is not in the very optimal spot. It tests for a V, which we haven't tried before, at least. But Brave... What is the problem with the R? Because there could technically be an R there.
Good, but...
And there's no reason to believe there is one. But...
I feel like it's less likely, but yeah, we could go for it. I would also like to include an O somewhere, but also not really necessary.
Trying to think with O. Can't be in second, obviously, but if we want AVE at the end, which I mean doesn't have to be, but then obviously we could try to go for something like O. But I don't think there's anything like Omave or Wave or Opave or Tave. I don't think there's anything obvious there. Ove. Actually, Ove. Come to think of it, right? Like an alcove. I mean, obviously, alcove is too long, slightly. Cove is too short, but maybe something like that. Because then we have your O, and maybe if we're very lucky, we can actually. Well, we can probably not put the A there, but we might be able to maybe start with an A, like alcove, but with just instead of LC, just one letter. A loaf. A love. Also no L's, so that above. How about above?
How about above? I like that. That's a good word.
It took me way too long, but like when you said I was like, at first I was trying to figure out how to put it in first, but then I realized OVE works perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, if I want of, obviously the A in first is perfect. A in second would have been just as perfect, but unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
There's your
O.
Also, shocker, but no V's and no B's.
More information on the central column. Let's go.
Go.
What's the chance that the second O is in?
Go. Oh,
yeah.
you mean right there because double O?
Yeah.
I mean, it almost seems more likely than putting it there, and putting it there is. I mean, it's doable, but then we'd have a worse out of the O, which I mean exists, and this is literally not allowed. So I don't hate this. Also, there can't be a G or E in here. Well, a G or N in here, which are two of the other letters that we're trying to fit in the column. So putting the O there puts a little bit of pressure off of those, which we like pressure, obviously, because it limits what we can do.
What is if the central row is a foot?
A foot. I mean, we're still looking for where the T goes, and there are now only 7 spots left where it can go. So, and we need an F. And we need an A somewhere in the column. I feel like the G and N are either in first and last, or just immediately around the O, like gone, right? It almost feels like it's either one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And first and last in either order. But it almost feels like you don't have like one in the first and then one in... I don't know why I feel like that, because I don't think there's an objective reason for that. Also, I feel like I want to put an A there. Because that row still needs one. Can't go there. And it would maybe look a bit stupid there. I don't know. I mean, AO does exist, but... And then here, you'd have the word ending with A, which is possible.
I mean, the column needs one.
Column
anyway,
also needs
so,
one.
Yeah.
Which the only other spot it could go would be at the bottom, which means it ends in FIA. Problem is we don't have any other positive hints that I could use. So I can't really be all smart about how it has to be some old spelling of sapphire that is closer to other languages and it's just Saphir. I don't know. It came to mind because this row needs an S and this one needs an R. And I'm pretty sure it still works as a name, maybe, but like... I don't know about... I don't think we're gonna get out too much more just right offhand, although we do still need to place an A in the first row. But there are 3 spots, and I don't see a strong argument for or against any, except maybe saying that words ending in A not that common, but... Oh, it could also end in NG. Like, along. Well, it can't literally be along because no else, but... sorry, center
Yeah.
I was... In case it wasn't...
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
Among.
At pretty much the exact same time.
Sergej, I think the answer is Among Us!
It might just be.
So I can do this. Among. Possibly. That doesn't really help us with a final row or column. Although, the among it would help us actually because it puts a G there. Which means we need an R. Well, RG. So that puts the R there, which, I mean, seems like a likely spot to begin with. Because it's not going to have RG, probably. Unless it's a syllable thing where it's like R, that sort of thing, but then what's the word that starts in GE? And then it's, I don't know, anger? No. Can't be. It can't be an N. I mean, it could technically be pager.
Almost have to be an... Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. But the first column has to have an E in there, and it cannot be in the first position. It's very unlikely to be in the second or the third. Fourth, it cannot be.
So you're saying it's
probably
eager?
In the last one. Oh, yeah, that might be.
I mean, that obviously then puts this A in question a little bit more, but one step at a time. Mm-hmm. I don't see a good reason for not trying it.
Let's go for it.
I mean,
it is.
Not even including the fact that it's correct. I mean, we just put all pressure off of this being an A.
Yep.
And granted, I'm starting to like this F here less and less.
Yep, it's probably in the last position then.
Aloof. Oh no, but it can't be.
Well, no else, yeah. That's the other thing I thought of before I said a foot.
A roof?
A hoof.
A hoof. Don't want to know what ends in HIA.
Actually, it might be a foot. It could be mafia.
Oh. Oh, right, I did put an A there originally. Which now has no specific reason for being there, but it has no reason for not being there either.
Could be.
Which makes this, I was gonna say karma, but that doesn't work because them is no. What do we need for the first row and column? We need EA, we have... Okay, we have all those. S... I mean, it could very well just be the last letter. Can't be the first, I think. Yeah, there's an S there.
Oh, yeah. True.
So... It's either there... or there. Question. If it's there, what is this word? Because it can't be satyr, now that I'm thinking that's particular. Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
The only word I can think of that would fit there is a little spicy. Also a little Greek, but satyr, you know, like a goat person.
Oh. I did not.
Because satyr with a U or satyr with an I doesn't make too much sense to me, right? So if the S goes there, which again, I wasn't saying it necessarily goes there. I was just saying I was mostly actually hoping that there was no solution here, so I could just go. It has to go there, but I can't talk myself into it.
It just makes the first row harder to solve.
I know, right?
Why'd you do that?
A mass.
Why do you have to know words?
A mass. Sergej, a mass. Then we can just test for both of the S's.
Sure.
And it's right. Have I ever mentioned that I'm a genius? I just was gonna be like, hey, a math technically works. You said it's too hard, and if it's just one of those S's, we at least know which one.
Yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake. We're in that situation again where, like, single letters should be fairly easy, right? But every single row or column that's missing letters is missing 2. Because we have like a 2x2 missing thing.
Mm-hmm.
God!
Also in spots where they influence pronunciation a lot.
Stone. Not stone. Huh.
Why not?
Because this can be a T.
No T's, yep.
I don't hate the N here, because then it's something inny, which I don't know what it would be exactly. I mean, mini like the mouse, but I don't think that actually mini as in small would be spelled that way. I think it would be spelled with an I. I'm not sure if the mouse is spelled with a Y. Come think of it. It's like Winnie, Rennie, Tinny, Zenny, Penny, Ginny. It's a name. Hinny, Ginny, Kinny, Zinny, Minnie. Also no M's. I don't love the double N.
Also mark the O as needing to be there. Same reason too.
Oh, the right.
Almost same reason. Yeah.
The row doesn't O. Oh, well, I mean, the row needs an M, we know that by now, so that's almost guaranteed to actually be a mong. I mean, at this point, the M we can't lock in definitively, but that one's pretty much a done deal. And the last column can't be safer. So, because no E. So I don't think that F is better here than T. Also, if we don't have a T there, it has to be there. I mean, it could still be one. Oh god, it could be something like minty. I mean, it can't be literally minty, but this could actually also be a T.
Oh.
But then, what would it be? Winty, Rinty, Tinty? Well, it can be Zinty, Pinty, Pinty? It occurs to me that it could be Rinty, Winty, Sinty, Sinty, Finty, Finty, Gianty, Ginty, Hinty, Hinty, Ginty, Gianty, Kinty, Kinty, Minty, Minty. Minty works, right? Like mint-like, but the problem is no M. No, the fact that this can't be a G either is annoying, because I feel like there are a lot of, like, G ones that will work.
Could be a K though. Because we haven't tested that yet.
Oh, you want it to be kinky?
Perhaps. Why not?
This is what a spoke? No, he spoke. A spoke? Is a spoke as a noun also spelled that way, or is it with O-A-K?
It's spelled the same way. I'm pretty sure.
Awake makes sense, but it just occurs to me that Wampa doesn't sound familiar to me.
You can just try it.
I was going to try it because we want to go by row anyways, and if it's not a word, then we know this is wrong. I feel like this would be the weak link, possibly, though, because if this is kinky, then this feels like it would have to be awake, right? There aren't that many K words in English at all. A rake is 2 words, yes, but a rake? A take? It literally can't be. So a zake, a pake, a zake, a fake, a gake, a hake, a jake, a cake, a yake, a make, click. So stoke is also can't be T. Swoke, stroke, stoke, zoke, spoke, zoke, spoke, skoke, choke, choke. No. Skoke. Smoke. I'm still particularly happy with Whamma, but
I don't think kinky is completely right. Maybe.
Oh, it could be hinky, I guess.
Or at least awake isn't.
It could be hinky. It could be pinky, actually, come to think of it. It could be like a gape or something.
Hey, that looks so much more correct now.
Oh, gamma, that works. I was gonna say we have to figure that out what the column says, what the row says, but it already says something. It's always both fascinating and kind of annoying whenever you have 1 or 2 letters wrong, and it takes so long to massage them into the correct position. So you're so close, but still completely off. So
there we go.
A mass gamma, a foot pinky, eager, agape, mafia, among, smoke, satyr. I know every single one of those words. This is gettable.
I would not have gotten satyr.
Well, that's your fault for not knowing your Greek mythology well enough.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's...
Alright.
I'm pretty sure, the thing is, right, because it's Greek mythology, I'm pretty sure it's also, the same in every language, right? So, in German it's Satyr, I think, it's pronounced, but, it's still spelled the same way. I mean, even though there is actually a reason why it could be slightly different, because, obviously, it would be transliterated from Greek, which obviously uses different spelling. But yeah, no, it's Satyr.
Yeah.
Open-ended questions. What is your favorite memory related to a holiday? I mean, chances are it's either Christmas or New Year's.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess specific memory. I don't really do memory, you know?
I don't either.
Procedural memory? I don't know. I'm bad at remembering things.
Same here.
I was kind of funny when... I think this was also in there before when people were talking about earliest childhood memory, and I'm like, I don't know. I can barely remember anything from my childhood, right? It's the fuck? It's probably just it's probably just Christmas and New Year's with the family, but I don't have a specific memory that stands out. I remember enjoying it.
Nothing specific.
But
Yeah,
Ah.
they're like always great. Like nothing specific just jumps out at you.
Also,
That
the problem is for us, like it feels like it's very similar each year. Like all of the things that are special about those holidays are like the same things every year. Like like
yeah, so it also kind of blends together.
yeah, exactly right. Like we used
The
to
memories.
do the same food thing for New Year's every single year. So
Yeah.
I remember enjoying that, but it's like that's not like one specific memory. That's like over years. I mean, we did do it this year because it didn't really make sense because we didn't have that many people. But like generally speaking, right, like it's something we've done a lot. I vaguely remember, I guess, like playing games with my family, like board games, card games, that sort of a thing. But also, whenever the little fragments of memory that I have, though, that because it's not like I remember a full game, not that anyone would. It's like I don't even know if those were specifically from like Christmas or New Year's, or if those were just like some random Sunday.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, guess next question. What makes you look up to your heroes? Well, I personally don't really have heroes.
I mean, I don't think there are. I don't really idolize people that way usually. I mean, I guess there are actual heroes like like comic book superhero types that some of them might actually be worth emulating, but most of them really aren't realistically if you think about it. Like, how come that if you're a billionaire, your idea of solving problems is to dress up as a bat and beat up criminals? That what? I know Batman is always the easiest one to tear apart, but still, there was a Power Pack comic about that where they were like, "Hey, I know you're all fighting crime and stuff, but you realize how much energy you could generate with your powers? Like, I mean, they end up being a plot by Supergirl to depower them, but the underlying idea of like, hey, you have super speed, you could literally just like run in a giant hamster wheel and like provide power for an entire city is like, I mean, it's not as fun as beating up bad guys, but
Yeah.
I guess the answer is I don't look up to heroes, right? I guess that's sort of the big picture thing, I guess. Like, there are characters that maybe have that element where it's like, there's always a better way, like those sort of like, those ideals come through, and those are very prevalent throughout superhero media in general, right? But like, I don't think there's like a specific character that I look up to, and if anything would make me look up to them, I guess it is like those ideals more than anything else. Like those. Often superhero media has a way of like simplifying the world, but it's like, I mean, obviously there's good guys and bad guys, which helps, but also just like, like problems are just solvable. And the real world is a bit more complicated, but oftentimes there are still things that can be changed. It just takes the work. Not that I'm necessarily the one doing it, but that like idea of like, you can always do better. You don't have to compromise on your ideals, that sort of thing. So I guess what I take away, but I don't think there's anyone in particular that I look up to. What would your ideal partner be like?
It's just like a decent human being that's into similar stuff as I am.
I was gonna say you kind of have to probably go more for personality than anything else, because that's the most important thing. Like obviously, yeah. I mean, he said decent person. That sounds like such a like such a like. It doesn't sound like like you're making a particular deep point, but it's really one of the big things. I mean, I feel like I don't feel like there are a lot of things that I can specifically put into words. Is the thing, right? Like, I want to feel that spark, but like that I don't know, like that doesn't really happen that much.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, smart, capable, a billionaire. I don't know. I mean, they said ideal, okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
I mean, realistically, most people that manage to become billionaires probably don't do so by actually having the character traits that I would look for, but that's not to say that money would be a bonus. That's such a superficial thing. But yeah, no, it's just, someone... I've said this before, and I think I'll say it again because it fits. I feel like someone's optimal, someone I can see eye to eye with, both literally and figuratively. And I never quite saw the appeal of the whole, like... I mean, I think it's mostly the stereotype that, like, girls want, like, tall guys. But sometimes you see guys who also want short girls. And I'm like, huh? Why?
No, like, not really.
Like, I don't need one that's particularly... I mean, I guess by average human height, technically would be above average. But, like, A-level, I don't want to be like this or this the whole time. Not that you'd realistically spend an entire relationship, like, actually, like, on your feet where you're looking at each other, but you get the point. The figurative part, I think, is more important, right? I think it's about not even shared interests as much, which, I mean, obviously, to some degree of shared interests would probably be useful. I'm not sure if you want 100% overlap, because I feel like you almost would want to broaden your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, like 100% overlap would be boring.
Right? But at the same time, I think it's more about sharing values than it is about sharing interests. I mean, sharing interests, at least to some degree, is nice, and you have to have some basis on, like, stuff to do and whatnot, I guess.
I guess.
But the values, I mean, I don't think I could, live with someone who has, like, diametrically opposed values. I mean, obviously, that's a bit of an extreme example, but not example, an extreme concept, but, like, I don't know, like, I guess maybe it's because politics is so divisive, but I feel like if you have, like, opposing political views, it's kind of a no-no, right? Like, imagine, obviously, it's like another extreme example, so, like, imagine, like, an anti-vaxxer or like, a climate change analyst, something like that. It's like, you can't live with someone like that, right? Like, that's just... I guess a rational connection to the truth would be good. It's not even as much of a values thing, but, like, like, the idea, right? I don't think, like, a conservative mindset, right? Like, the whole idea of, like, the world inherently has hierarchies and I want to be on top, right? Like, that doesn't really work for me. It's like sure, right? If I'm not saying that I don't want to do well, but, like, I tend to believe that equality is possible, right? On like all sorts of levels. Probably the biggest one being the class level, of course, because, the whole billionaire thing. I know, ironic, I said money, I like it, but, like, why are there billionaires in the first place? Like, that's a stupid thing. Like,
it is.
But it's not even about it's not even about putting the billionaires down the peg as much as it's about lifting other people up, especially the less fortunate ones. I'm not saying that, like, a reorganizing of the world or would necessarily profit me personally all that much, but still, just seems like the right thing to do. Not that I have the power to do it, or a hypothetical partner would necessarily have the power to do it, but that's just sort of the underlying values that I think you need, because you're gonna have a lot of disagreements if you don't, right? And some degree of disagreement is obviously healthy, but I think for, like, fundamental values is kind of one of the more important things, and then some shared interests, and of course attractive. I mean, if we're saying ideal, right? I can't be like, obviously pretty is a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Obviously. How would the
world change if suddenly everyone could read each other's thoughts? I think people think a lot of things that other people don't really need to know. That's the one thing. I think the immediate impact would be very negative. But I think in the long term, this could be positive.
Immediately, yeah. Long term, it's probably going to be a massively positive thing. Because it would probably reduce corruption by a lot. You could literally just know if the other person intends to.
I mean, I guess it's the thing about thoughts, right? It's like the whole thing where it's like, what constitutes a thought, right? Is it just like the actual conscious things that are on your mind, or is it does it go deeper than that? But if you know what's in each other's heads, you basically can't deceive people, right? I mean, I guess maybe if you like think of a plan to deceive someone, then you try to suppress those thoughts. But like realistically,
or you just deceive yourself, like somehow first.
Yeah, but that's obviously hard to do. But it's a thing where I think it would be very helpful if we understood that a lot of people are coming from like an earnest viewpoint, and we might disagree, but there might be like sometimes we're all arguing with faith, and sometimes we aren't, right? Like that's also the thing where it's like if someone's just being a troll, you just know, but like there's no point in engaging, and so I think it also overcomes, at least in theory, a lot of those things where people are accusing others of like having like more convoluted motives than they actually have, and it's like, oh yeah, you just want to do this because you want to do X and Y, and like they want to trans our kids, like it's like no, that's stupid. Why would you even think that? And like if you could read my thoughts, you would know that no one wants to do that. That's just in your head.
Yeah.
Right. So like that sort of thing, but like I think immediately you would have like a lot of the like less pleasant thoughts that people have would take some getting used to, right? Because people are not used to like getting every unfiltered opinion. Trust me, I know people aren't used to that because I don't have no filter, okay? Mostly. No, but like I tell it like it is. I tell it like I see it. I tend to not post around negative things oftentimes, to the same way that other people do. It's sometimes received badly, but the point being, that's basically how everyone will be all the time. It would actually make communication easier, but also people would have to get over the fact that they don't get their feelings every time someone thinks it's negative about them. Which the society would adjust, right? Like that's kind of thing. And then I think afterwards it would actually be a very positive thing. Although, I'm not saying it's a desirable thing. That's also the thing, right? Where it's like, more understanding between people is good, but also I kind of like privacy, like just out of principle, if nothing else.
You could also just like, depending on how this is, like how you read each other's thoughts. If you can do that just to anyone without like having to see them, whatever, that would just eliminate the need for like communication through electronics, or like almost eliminate it.
Yes, I mean that's a particularly extreme example of how that could work, of course, but yes. Also, thoughts are not always necessarily in a specific linguistic format, so you could argue does it eliminate language barriers, which would also be huge.
It would probably help.
And if it
at
does,
the very least,
if it does work more remotely, then that definitely does work with corruption, like you said, right? But it's like, how can you be corrupt if everyone knows that you're corrupt, right? Because I mean, I feel like a lot of people assume with politicians that all politicians are corrupt, and frankly, a lot of them probably are. But there's at least a bit of deniability there. Not literally everyone believes that about literally every politician, right? And so there is like some degree of thing. And if you actually knew who were the ones that are honestly fighting for their opinions and who are just the ones that are being paid chills, then I think that would also chill. Like, it wouldn't really make sense to pay someone to defend your opinion because everyone knows that they're not being earnest, right? So that's like
yeah.
I just think it could be. So in that sense, I think it could be good, but
Yeah, for me, like the positives outweigh the negatives by far. So like I would be for that.
It's one of those things where, because it's just so different from how we're used to doing things, it's like a very foreign concept to me, and I find it hard. Like the idea that anyone can just see what I think. And even if I'm fairly transparent, I would like to think I'm more transparent than the average person,
Yeah.
right? But I still feel like there are some things that I just, don't necessarily want everyone to know that I'm thinking, But at the same time, everyone has those, right? So the idea that we probably get used to that. Like, oh yeah, people don't always control what they think about, right? Like those sort of, and, sometimes you have thoughts that maybe aren't the most desirable. It's like, so I guess we would get over that, but it just. Definitely would eliminate, or it should theoretically eliminate, any sort of like miscommunication, because you understand, you should be able to understand immediately what the other person thinks you were trying to communicate to them. It eliminates misunderstandings.
Oh, how would that help education?
Yeah. I mean, in theory, if you can retain, I mean, I guess the retention is still the problem, right? Because while communication is more efficient, you have more throughput because you can also convey images and like more abstract concepts rather than just language. So communication is helped by that. But at the same time, right, like the students will still have to absorb it. So it's not that different than if you have visual aids.
Some people don't even get to understand something.
I mean, yes.
Not even talking about absorbing it.
I guess it helps for the teacher to see where the students are also not understanding. So I guess in that sense it helps the teacher. My first thought when you said that was like, oh yeah, you can just like basically direct thought transference and just like share your knowledge more effectively. Which probably wouldn't be that much more effective because again, right, like we already can make like imagery and like diagrams and stuff, so I don't think it's that much more helpful than seeing directly into your head, but being able to see into the students' heads to see where they're truly struggling, which oftentimes you find very hard to put into words, where like even if you want to get help from the teacher, like I have seen students ask the same question multiple times, it's like the teacher answers it the same way every time. It's like, that clearly isn't working, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's that for the day. Which brings us to our final segment. Unless you wanted to say something more about mind reading.
No. Let's go for the songs.
For the songs of
my song of the week.
Yes.
Is "Мои ясные дни" by Олег Газманов.
Как же так получается? Все так быстро кончается, и не так уже вечером нас зовут фонари. Жизнь подруга упрямая, но держать спину прямо я буду, что бы ни случилось, от зари до зари.
I'll go with
Fair enough.
Anything else you want to say about this?
Not really, no.
Which brings us to my song of the week, and I'm going to do something a bit unusual. I'm going to start this by saying, if you haven't heard this before, you might want to look it up on YouTube, and you might want to watch the full 10-minute video with the introduction bit as well. It's a little long introduction, it is, but it really gives context to the lyrics of the song.
It is worth it. It really is worth it.
I already showed it to Sergej, so for once he does know what my song of the week is. Mm-hmm. And my song of the week, click the info card now if I remember to put one, is Thank You God by Tim Minchin.
Fuck me, Sam. What are the odds that of history's endless parade of gods, that the God you just happen to be taught to believe in is the actual God, and he digs on healing, but not the AIDS-ridden African nations, nor the victims of the plague, nor the flood-addled Asians, but healthy, privately insured Australians with common and curable lens degeneration.
It's quite a funny song, and it has, I do fully support the message, so, there's that.
Yep.
It's definitely, anti-God, if you put it and pay attention. More specifically, it's obviously about the Christian God, although, I think a lot of the concepts definitely apply to at least Abrahamic faiths at large. So, in a broader sense, maybe to other religions, but I think he makes a lot of good points in that song, honestly. I mean, I don't think he many points that I hadn't heard before, but the way he puts it very succinctly and simultaneously in a genuinely good song is, I think, the kind of thing that you kind of have to admire to a degree. So yeah, there's that. Which brings this episode of the Fresh Talk podcast to a close. If you enjoyed it, leave a like if you want to see more like this. Subscribe to the channel if you want to talk to us. Leave a comment or join us. Because links in the description below. Sergej.
That's it.
That's it.